You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis show. Now, um, I should read this to you because Rashid Pepo wants you to hear. He says he admires you a lot for your consistency in fighting for the rights and freedoms of people and supporting media freedoms against any frustration. He does his hat. That's what he says. That's Rashid Pepo. Thank you, Doc, for sending in that message.
To who? To you?
To Kweku.
Oh,
Kweku.
okay.
Yes. His
You
consistency.
can claim it.
I can't. Right. It's not for me.
Now let's go briefly to MASLOC. And MASLOC, we are informed MASLOC is supposed to be the microfinance and small loans center. And in the course of the week, you have heard stories about more than 350 commercial vehicles, mostly taxis, that have been confiscated from individuals and groups who failed to repay loans they contracted from MASLOC. You have also heard that they have mounted a search, very intensive, to retrieve more than 150 more vehicles whose owners are indebted to the center. And MASLOC officials are telling us that there is so much debt that they are unable to operate now. And MPs are part of the situation, including actors and actresses. Is that what MASLOC was set up for, to give loans to people who already have, or what's going on? That's the question to ask. But a key issue that also came up was what is said to be overpriced cars that MASLOC allegedly entered into a contract to supply 350 cars. And these cars have been sitting there. Initially, the suggestion was that they were rotting. Now we understand they are nowhere close to getting rotting, and that they were overpriced. And because they were overpriced, the GPRTU, who were supposed to take the vehicles, chickened out and didn't want to take them. There were claims that the previous government had wanted to give them at a low cost, and this government, or those who are in charge of this MASLOC now, decided to increase the price, and that is what led to what is happening. I'm sure that you have followed the discussion so far. Now, I'd like to start with Kweku on this.
Well, see, yesterday I heard the new boss, I've forgotten the designation, but is this chief executive?
Chief executive, yeah.
On Asampa Kaba's program.
Right.
And there was one thing that struck me. He referred to a forensic audit investigations that are underway relative to MASLOC.
Okay.
This was after the former CEO had gone there and spoken.
Yeah, Selina Tamaklo. She was also on the show.
So let's wait. Why don't we wait for the forensic audit investigations? We, the media, as far as we are entitled to do this kind of stories, run with it and all the rest. But those who are stakeholders in terms of the players, key players in this thing, I would advise that if there's a forensic investigation underway, the earlier it's completed and the findings made public, the better. It settles a lot of things, particularly when things are boxed into the partisan political framework, so that everybody is talking. You see, this partisanship sometimes is an escape route for people who have committed some, violations or blunders to have their freedom. So my primary point now is that the earlier the forensic investigation is completed, the findings made public, and then the particular institutions that could deal with the findings kick in, the better. But there's this subculture, this groups, MASLOC, that is targeted as supposed to help small and medium enterprises and things. We have had a terrible history. Look, there was a business assistance fund. It suffered the same thing. People take the loans or the grants, they get the support, and they violate. I'm sure I'm not going to ask for amnesty for anybody in this call. This is where you see my bias, perhaps inconsistency. But it's consistent over the years. There was a Ghana investment fund that came after the business assistance fund. It collapsed. There was a Japanese grant for non-project type activities. Monies were given out from far back as 1987 to 2002 or so. Parliament was sitting on that issue. And I would want to read something just to illustrate that whole thing. Well, we are unable to deal with it. This is Hansard of June 2nd, 2006. And they were discussing this Japanese grant after the Auditor General had presented his report. The Public Accounts Committee's report was now being discussed on the floor of the House. And this is Mr. Lee Okran.
And that appears to be a year before President Kufuor brought in the MASLOC.
Interesting. Okay, because initially, under Kufuor's administration, they took away the Business Administration Fund, which has suffered the same thing, brought in the Ghana Investment Fund, that also suffered the same thing. And sometimes it's also the politics involved. Some of the target groups who get are people aligned to the administration of the day, so they think they shouldn't pay. Some genuinely had serious difficulties. But it's a combination of this. But you listen to Leo Kran. He says, if you look at table 12, you can see that people have been owing since 1987. We're talking here June 2nd, 2006. In fact, because of people's inability or unwillingness to pay back the grant that they have taken, they ordered rice, sugar, which they have sold, and refused to pay the money back to the Bank of Ghana. In 1998, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning decided that any beneficiary of the Japanese grant should be guaranteed by his bankers. Yet we can see from the table that from 1998 to the year 2000, the total amount owed is 43 billion cedis. I wonder why the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning has not held those banks responsible for the collection of the monies. That notwithstanding, I am not saying that those who owe from 1987 should not pay, but in particular, in 1998 to 2000, we have banks that guaranteed those loans, and therefore the banks are under obligation to pay back those monies. In 2001, when Honorable Yao Osafo-Mafu took over the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning, he announced that he was going to publish in the dailies the list of people who owed. You are talking of artists and things. But he did the first publishing, and that was the end. I wonder what happened or what he saw that made him develop cold feet. But whether the feet were cold or warm, the money should be paid. And we as a house should take all measures, put all pressures possible on the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning to make these people pay, these people who collected state monies from 1987, imported rice and sugar, and sold them and did not pay the monies back to the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning, but rather use the money to do their own thing, to pay back the money. We must set an example. Otherwise, we'll continue suffering. We'll be sitting here and approving grants, the profits of which do not come to the state as such, but go to individuals. How many years gone? It's 2006. The thing started 1987. We are in 2017. I'm sure when the forensic audit comes out, you have a long and tall list of defaulters. You will have a situation where perhaps monies, loans, grants were given to people who did not even have the capacity to deliver on what they had put on paper as the basis for being attracting those things. Or you may have a situation where loans and grants were given to people who cannot even be recognized. People without addresses. That's what we've been doing. A fine idea. Get some money, target people who are vulnerable, people who are having some economic challenges in that small, medium
Well,
sector.
they say they are going to publish the names of those who owe the MPs and everybody. And then at a point, they are going to actually publish their photographs as well. When you listen to the deputy CEO, Mami Efakoto.
In this Hansard, and then the NPP, who was it? I think it's another MP. He called for that. He said they should publish their pictures and names. This is 2006. What did we do about it? So there's something wrong, and that's part of the waste and corruption in the system. And the cost of this is huge. I do not want to be judgmental. I want the forensic audit. As Leo Okran said, we should set examples. We have never been able to set the real examples. We should use this MASLOC thing. I'm not judging. I heard the former chief executive yesterday on Asempa. I have to be honest. I wasn't convinced. Okay? I thought she shouldn't have gone to the radio station to make a case.
She issued a statement. And if you want to follow her statement, it does appear that those who have been in a hurry, so to speak, to put out those facts are rather the ones that she is rather exposing so terribly.
You know what? Maybe she feels she's been attacked. Her integrity is on the line, and integrity is priceless. So perhaps one should be fair to her and accept what she... But there were some documents she didn't produce in the studio. Those were very substantial issues. And you know, if you once you had decided to go to the radio program on basis of allegations that have been made against you, those critical areas, equip yourself very well. So I was left unconvinced.
But there are some substantive issues she raises. That the claim was that, first of all, you did sole sourcing, and you did it in a manner to give the supplier of this car sort of let them inflate the price, because that was your preference. And she brings the information that this supplier was actually chosen by the GPRTU because they were already in some negotiations with this entity to supply them cars. So when they got the MASLOC to take that burden from them, they rather dictated that we're already dealing with this car company. So go to that place and get us the cars.
And what has happened to the cars? And what is GPRT's position now? They're conflicting. Or even GPRT appears to be...
There are two officers within the GPRTU
that's right,
who are speaking.
Obviously, radio, TV, we journalists, we can continue. I'm not going to be sitting... I'll sit here and ask journalists to cease fire. Right. We can't. Okay. That would be a very terrible advice to give.
We are stuck in trade.
Yes. But those in charge of the institutions or were in charge of the institutions, I think they should begin to go to those doing the forensic audit, put their case across. Those doing the forensic audit should also fast track so that we can have solutions to this matter.
Okay, interesting. John.
Oh, I thought I was going to put me in trouble. So you're going to throw light.
She responded to that, and she issued a long statement that many people have read.
Unfortunately, I haven't seen her statement. Actually.
Oh, okay. She responded to that issue and sought to clarify the issues.
And the tricycles as well.
And she was the first to now bring to bear that it was not as if MASLOC just got up and said, GPRTU want to do you this. They made a request, and then they decided to accede to that request, to assist them to procure the cars. And then they provided the company that we are dealing with, so continue dealing with this company. And then they went into the deal with them. And also that there was this information that was also published by persons within the presidency trying to sort of, damage her reputation, that she had also purchased 600 tricycles for 17 million. And she says that is also a lie, because there were actually a total of 2,000 that were being purchased. And in any case, if you have any problem with them, whatever we purchased, we didn't use. They are still sitting there. You decide what you do with them.
See, I think that this might sound quite controversial. I think that some of your people should move out of the campaign mode and move into the mode of governance and dealing with the problems confronting the states. I felt very, very uncomfortable when I heard Ibrahim Ejay in particular made that assertion. I thought it was needless. And that's...
and Ibrahim Ejay is a presidential staffer.
Presidential staffer. And when the presidential staffer talks, and for the record...
When you say some of your people, you mean Samson's people?
No, I mean Kojo. I said Kojo.
Oh, okay. All right, sorry.
See, a presidential staffer, during our time, your office holding is almost at par with the Minister of State. A presidential staffer. And so when you come out from the presidency and you make these comments, it's very disturbing. You see, you are in government to deal with all the issues. Assets, liabilities, challenges. You determine how you want to deal with them. Bear in mind, Madam Sedina is already in touch with IOCO. She's responded to their invitation. She's cooperating with them. I had my own. I'm working with the police, cooperating with them. My mind is clear. So let the state institutions do the work and come out with the facts. And that's what Kwegu says. No, he's waiting for the report. That will be an authentic document we can all deal with. Even MASLOC on its own could have decided that they're going to buy the buses without GPRCU. They can do that. They've been doing that. They buy vehicles and give them out. MPs and other people go for the vehicles. Sometimes MPs go for the vehicles, not because they want to use it. For instance, you might have a women association. You need a tricycle for them. And as MP, you go in and stand in, take it and hand it over to them. I'm not saying that all of them do that. But if an MP does something like that, it is commendable. However, those monies ought to be paid. And so, if GPRT, and GPRT wrote to the ministry, I have the letter, a copy of it here, I can share that with you. GPRTU wrote to the ministry, and then the ministry went through the processes.
Which ministry?
To MASLOC.
Okay.
They wrote the Chief Executive, MASLOC, Accra, application for financial assistance. I think it's dated 20th May or so. So all this...
2016.
Yeah, 2016. So these are issues that I would wish that the Chief Executive in particular holds his fire. Because some of the comments I hear him make is quite disturbing. You see, when the president appoints you as Chief Executive for such a sensitive institution, the president is giving you the huge responsibility. And I would wish that he focuses on that responsibility. The buses are in. All the vehicles are in, 350. For almost 1 year or so, the vehicles have been packed. We are losing money because the suppliers brought out the vehicles. If there are issues with the contractual issues, deal with it. But in his opinion, he says that they cannot cancel the contract. He says that. So resolve that. Even if it means that the state would have to intervene.
Says they are reluctant because they are afraid of judgment debt, and they are referred to the Attorney General for advice because he doesn't have the capacity to make a legal judgment on the issue.
So let's deal with that. But he said there's a fundamental issue. Why is it that when there's a change of government at the district office, the Director of Education, the Director of Agriculture, the Director of Health, party people do not go to their offices to seize keys. But with MASLOC, youth employment, and those newly created ones, anytime there's a change in government, and there's a fact from NDC, NDP, there's always an attempt by party apparatchiks and officials to put our people there. Can't we learn something? I think there's a problem with the structure itself. Can you imagine if we had advertised that we need a MASLOC chief executive? Everybody apply. You go through a competitive process and you appoint the best person who qualifies to man that place. All this would have been minimized. While listening to Sedina, she said at the time she took over, the recovery rate was 6%. She's now worked and brought the recovery rate to 70%. I don't have the facts. That's what she says. It's encouraging. I just tried to check, and you see, in 2010, May 2010, the Northern Regional Secretariat of MASLOC has dragged 22 clients to a district high court in Tamale. And if you read it, it's as if it's been given to party apparatchiks. They believe that they toiled and brought the party into power. And so when MASLOC gives them money, they keep the money. Even today, if you look at what Stephen Amwa says, he's accusing the NDC administration that during our time, we gave the MASLOC loans to only NDC sympathizers. And so for me, there's a structural problem. How do we assess people? How do we give the loans? What are the checks?
But is it a fact of fiction that you use such avenues to sort of reward your party people?
It's a fact.
Look, from what is happening, it will not be far from the fact. And you see, it's that perception. And that's why I said that if you were to go to the Ministry of Agri today and ask for extension services, you would know that there are laid down procedures. You know that if you are taking fertilizer, you ought to pay for it. But when you go to MASLOC and you take a vehicle costing about $15,000, the mindset is that as if it's the party's money. So we should rather be looking at the structure of these institutions. MASLOC, NHIS in particular, a very sensitive place, Youth Employment Agency, and all those other agencies. What is wrong with those agencies? How can we ensure that we restructure them and put them on a pedestal such that they would respond to the needs and aspirations of the people and not the political needs of other people? And for me, that's a broader picture that I think we should be looking at and dealing with. When we do that, it will have an effect on all these things.
Does the state need to run MASLOC at all?
The structure will tell. Maybe you have some money, you could pass it through the banks and tax the banks. There are a lot of microfinance companies. You could get a microfinance company to post a bond. So we're giving you this microfinance company 2 million, but you post a bond, you go through some requirements. Because the essence is that, look, there's a certain class of people who are willing to work, who, when given the opportunity, they will take advantage, use these monies, and pay back.
Okay.
In my constituency, we gave women groups 200 cedi, 200, not these huge sums. Those women groups have worked, made profit, paid back, and the money is evolving. So I think that we can get it right. But until we get the structure right, all these issues would keep festering, and it's very difficult to deal with that.
Okay, thank you. Now, could you, maybe you can help us better with, your expertise in the area of finance and managing such situations. My final question to him, if you want to start from that point, why is it that when the government wants to do such things, it's always failing? It's unable to recover anything, really. But private entities do it, and they do it and make profit.
And it's not true, actually, that private entities do it and do it so well. Something, you see, there's a structural problem in our economy and in our governance system that we all try to run away from. And what politicians and governments have done over the years is that we find some money, we throw it at the problem, we create some amorphous vehicle that is not properly grounded in law and proper governance structures. And by virtue of how A, we haven't tackled the underlying problems, and B, how we have structured that entity, what ends up happening is that it becomes a political slush fund for people. Let's be honest and call a spade a spade. You remember the problems of the National Youth Employment Program. After they had their initial probe, etc., one of the findings was essentially that this thing had not been properly structured in law. Brilliant idea, not properly structured in law, governance structures left amorphous. And so interesting things will happen. And we've had countless numbers of them. Senior Kwekubako was going back to 2006. I want to talk about recent times. We've done things like Les Deb, Yes Dec, all sorts of interesting arrangements, which end up just throwing money, which becomes a slush fund for party people, and at the end of the day, you can't take it back. At the heart of the issue, for me, one lies with dealing with the fundamental challenges. And when you come to the area of credit for SMEs, listen, we are all playing ostrich in this country. There are structural problems with SME finance and management, which we have not tackled.
It's true.
Even if you give the money to the banks and the microfinance, and I'm suggesting that very soon, even if government found $1 billion and said, I want a few banks to post a bond and take it and give it to SMEs, you will find most banks saying no. Because the structural problem is that it will become a toxic asset on your lending books, and you can't even collect it back.
And it's happened, Kuyo.
Yes.
That happened.
That is the one we need to crack. If you don't crack that one and you create these vehicles and throw some money into it, A, it won't come back, and B, it will end up being thrown away politically. So I am drawing attention to the fact that that's what we need to crack. But I'm also happy that it is something that government has identified. And already there are conversations and efforts to tackle some of those underlying challenges through improving corporate governance, technical support, so that you don't just end up throwing money in that space. But let me also escalate the conversation to the next level about these amorphous bodies that we create. And we have done it over and over again. Throw some money at it, put some political appointee there, and we struggle to manage it. It doesn't matter whether it's MPP or NDC, we struggle to manage it. Because after you've gone through a campaign and people have been with you, and they bring on the table a business plan and they say, this is a government program, let's tap into it. Ask every politician who wants to tell you the truth. You will struggle to answer the question whether or not you should give that money out. And that's what causes many of these things. My view is that we need to properly situate these things in law. We have to craft a proper body in law, make the appointments of these persons properly structured so that they are not mere or simple political appointees who themselves become hostage to party people when they are demanding something. If you don't do that, you're just going to run in circles. You change the color of the animal, it will still be the same animal. The next issue has to do with these media trials that we do, particularly when it comes to matters of criminality and corruption. I personally don't subscribe to it. Because you see, it does a lot of harm to all of us. If JJ and myself are to engage in this thing where we are constantly doing a media trial on crime and corruption accusations, what ends up happening is that the average person out there thinks that both of us are liars and are thieves. And if we politicians are asking ourselves, why does everybody think a politician is corrupt? It's because we do it to ourselves. That's the first one. What it also does is that it poisons the national psyche. The next time we're having a conversation about anything, the government, the governor, the people who are seized with the power to manage are not credible anymore, because we've been calling ourselves thieves and trading accusations on radio when we haven't waited for the final investigation to either convict us or to acquit us. As for the media, and I've been a media practitioner, we are happy to hear such stories. We will go to town and interrogate it. But I think that we, as politicians, should not fall to that bait. We are conducting investigations. Let the results be known. If persons are guilty, the law courts are there. That's why we call them courts of competent jurisdiction.
Right.
We'll put it there. We'll convict the persons. If the persons are not guilty, they'll go there and defend themselves and they'll be free. But in the meantime, the broader things that we seek to do, which is to properly situate these things in law, MASLOC, for example, needs to be properly capitalized. I recall when they appeared before the Finance Committee at the beginning of this year to defend their budgets, one of the things that we all considered was that we have to deal with the elephant in the room and properly capitalize them, do a proper asset quality review so that they can run. And that is where we need to ensure that we get the resolution. These things, the media will call us and ask us on the phone, but you can make a choice as to whether or not you want to be, engaging in a radio battle on some of these matters. The bodies that are investigating have the competence, they are doing a good job. Let them do that good job and let them put the answers on the table for all of us to move forward.
And sometimes, don't you also see that we create some difficulties for the bodies that are actually investigating? Because we give a certain impression there, and they investigate, and it's a different story.
Fantastic.
And then we accuse them of doing a poor job, or rather that they just are unable to do.
Perfectly right.
Because
Because
has to be done.
we even prejudice the things that need to be done. And I think that we have a responsibility to hold ourselves, let the thing be done, and then let's get it over with.
Right. What do you say? And could you mention, issues of prosecution that we are all talking about? We have heard the MASLOC, particularly the deputy CEO, talk about prosecutions. I'm sure she's talking about going to civil actions because these are not prosecutions. But even those ones, and even with the NCA issues that we spoke about, there is what we call the statute of limitation.
Yes. After a while, you can't do
Some
anything
of these
about
people,
it.
as we hear, took the loans as far back as whenever.
Exactly.
By law, they
After
cannot
a
go
certain
after
time.
them.
Yes.
You can't
Interesting
go
point.
and claim the money.
You can't.
Interesting point.
What's going on? We are
Very
just throwing the
interesting
money and intentionally allowing our party people to keep them.
Samson, I'll be very blunt on this. Government has no business going into microfinance.
Really?
So, yes, they have no business. They have no business going into microfinance. And you see, we are repeating, and we continue to repeat what past governments have done and done wrong. This is a typical situation where the government in power should sit back and say, let's look at the structure. The structure is not working for us. That is one.
Yeah, but that's happening now.
Two, well, we don't know.
I'm telling you.
Two, show me evidence. Two, why is it that governments in and out always want to put political cronies in such institutions when they don't have any experience to run a microfinance company? Why? And I'll ask the question, has MASLOC, when did they make profit? When has MASLOC made profit since its inception?
When you make the indictment charge of put people and cronies who do not have expertise, you may be wrong.
Really?
Yes, you may be wrong.
Really?
Because the people that have manned it over the period,
yes,
you may not be able to say so about them. Stephen Amwa, who is in charge now, has expertise in finance.
Okay.
He's schooled in Ghana and abroad.
Samson, let me give you a typical example.
Though he's a party man.
Yes, he's a party person.
Exactly. And that is where the problem is. Because if you get instructions from Flagstaff House, X person is coming, give them 500,000. You're a party man. Are you going to say no? Are you going to say no? Because you're thinking of your position. You're thinking of your daily bread. You're thinking of how you also will survive.
I promised the literacy.
JJ is sitting here saying what he's saying. Why didn't he say it when he was in power?
I said it.
Why didn't he push his party to do it? And if his party wasn't doing it, why didn't he say, if I see there's a major problem here, I'm ready to resign if this thing isn't taking up?
Hey, you just came from Mars.
Why did I just come from Mars?
No, I'm supporting you.
I mean,
No.
This is.
But we had that with
listen,
Sada.
I don't.
We spoke about it.
I don't subscribe.
And people were ready to resign if you know they were not listening to.
Spoke about it.
Don't take my time.
Okay, let's
Samson,
Mr. Janto
I
speak.
don't ascribe to politicians leading institutions. I don't ascribe to it. Because you will get competent people who aren't politicians, who run institutions well. A party comes in and they take that person off and put a politician there. And by the end of the 4 years, the institution is worse off than when they took over. What has government got to do with microfinance? Aren't they cooperative banks? Even let's say that the people in the rural areas would need money to do these things. Are they not cooperative banks? Can't you put structures in place whereby banks will be held responsible if it so happens that the monies they're giving them are misappropriated? And do you think if, let's say, there was a neutral person there, or even let's say the politician has been put there, but the disbursements of the money didn't come directly from MASLOC, what MASLOC should be doing is looking at the administrative side, looking at the applications that come in, pass it over to the bank. The bank too would also look at what has been brought in, and based on that, you're giving the money. But again, how do you monitor people who have come for monies to buy taxis? How do you monitor that they pay? There has to be some structure in place whereby monies can be deducted somehow.
No, but we explained that these taxis and other cars that were bought, MASLOC was pre-financing with the first, 30%. And there was supposed to be a revolving fund. They were going to be paying the money as they receive it, and then even the interest was to be used to purchase more, to assist, others, to further that program.
Samson, the cancer that has happened is the fact that my party about power. My party is in power now. I will take it and I will not pay. You see, this is where institutions like the NCCE should come in, so that there's constant education, letting people know the reasons why certain things have been put in place. Constant education. And you see, the problem isn't only the institution. The problem is the Ghanaian and the mindset of the Ghanaian. That mindset has to change. And really, I don't know when we shifted into this area of the way our mindset is. I remember when I was a small boy, Tangas is coming to inspect your house, and you've left your house dirty. You will pay for it. Anytime we knew Tangas was coming, we were running like hedgehogs to make sure that our house was clean. When did that stop? Is it that we cannot bring that back? Yes, it will take time, but we've got to start from somewhere.
Okay,
because of us, I'm concerned, MASLOC so far
a bit and
has
back
not
to,
been beneficial.
A bit and back to the issue
us.
that has brought us to discuss. I've realized that all of you want to look at the bigger picture and how to, move forward in future. But the issue now, what would be your proposal to those who are in management now? What should they do to what they have come to meet that they have issues with?
Well, let us see exactly I heard Kweku say that they're going to do a forensic audit. Let them do the forensic audit and let's see. And if it so happens that some people in power or some politicians are seen to be culpable, let's make sure that we charge them to court. Because that money is taxpayers' money, isn't it? We have gone for the money from somewhere, or some country has given it to us for a grant. It doesn't bode well for us outside. It's not right.
Okay.
But I still believe that the mindset of the Ghanaians should change. The government is trying to help you. The government is trying to create employment. The government is trying to make sure that you have some money to look after yourself. But if the Ghanaian isn't ready to stick to what the government is doing, the government should get out of microfinance and all that.
Well,
use it as...
Okay, Koko just a quick one. Up first.
You see, the structure of the Ghanaian economy, the size of the Ghanaian small and medium enterprises, the sector, it's quite big.
Yes, we understand.
And that is why, that is what attracts some state, or if you like, government, seasonally intervention. It is how it's done and the culture that has come with it. But otherwise, this kind of economy, the way our structure is, there's the need for state
Kweku,
support.
you gave a
That's all I
litany.
want
Kweku, you gave a litany of how these things
So is
have
that
been
how we
handled
have gone
all
about
this
And
while.
they should
continue?
just their debtors recover their monies.
But Kojo went further in terms of how we've structured these things, both institutionally, legally, and all that. That's where the thing is. But it's not a question of excluding state support. I won't.
Some will say the attitude is the same. If the NCA says 5,000 per year, and you don't pay, and you say give them amnesty, this is what to work for amnesty.
It's Akuma is taking me on already. And I agree.
Yes.
Terrible minority.
But just to say that I agree with Kweku's view that if, and even for those of us who come from, may I say, a center-right political dispensation, who believe in traditionally what we call trickle-down economics, we acknowledge that you need to, sometimes do direct intervention from the bottom, because there are some people that if you are waiting for trickle-down, you'll never get there.
Is it working?
But the challenge really is how we have done it successively over the period. But just to say to him, I do know that right now there is work going on to ensure that we can, or to explore how we can get a proper legal framework for this, and it started from April when we were looking at their budgets and inquiring into what sort of legal arrangements govern some of the things that they do, because these are sometimes set up as programs, some money thrown at it, lots of money. And once it's economic policy of government, it will pass. Once it passes, then we have challenge. If I may,
just a minute.
Let him finish. There are also exercises that are going on now to improve the operational infrastructure of MASLOC. For example, Stephen Amoah himself, with his background, and a number of other people who are assisting to improve it and to literally try to depoliticize it, even as we are improving the legal framework within which it works. And then finally, some work to improve the asset quality and the proper capitalization of the entity, so that it doesn't become every year in a budget you have to dedicate some 50 million to it. It goes down the drain, it doesn't come back. Next year you find some money and through, and then we can try and improve on it. So these are things that are going to try to fix the challenges that we have.
Let me ask you a question. Typical topic we've discussed earlier, NCA and the situation with the radio station. Is there no legal framework?
Well, but
is there? Wait, is there no legal framework?
Maybe MASLOC has a legal framework.
You see, my challenge is you can get a legal framework, but will they honor it?
So
will it be honored?
So if you take my first argument, I am one, and I do know that people in this government believe clearly that one, have a proper legal framework to ensure that it works. That's why you are seeing some of the things that are going on. And we are hoping that we don't get into the point where now when you say let it work, then we say, let's have an amnesty first.
Let's see.
Well, I think that the bottom line has to do with the way and manner, one, we do the structure. And it's also the politics of it. Because, comrade, we've gone there promising our women that vote for us. When we come, you have MASLOC loans.
That is it.
No, but it's a fact. We promised them. So we are watching to see what will happen, whether we'll honor our promise to the women or not. But you see, set the example from the beginning.
Okay, thank you.
And that's why I said that.
Thank
even
you.
in terms of
Thank you, and thank you. And we take our final break here. We'll be right back. We'll be right back and ask questions, including how assemblies were supposed to foot the bill for the president's tour.